11 days, that's how long before Lehman Brothers vaporized $10 trillion in global wealth. 11 days, the Federal Reserve Chairman sat in front of Congress and told them the financial system was, quote, fundamentally sound. Not nervous, not hedging, confident professional. He was wrong in a way that cost tens of millions of people their homes, their savings, their retirements. And here's the part that should get your full attention. He wasn't the first person to say it. Not even close. He was reciting a line from a script so old it has its own footnotes. I'm going to show you 3 lies, not theories, not forum speculation. Documented, verified, cross-referenced phrases, the same 3 lies that appear in the historical record of every major collapse for the last 100 years. Weimar Germany, the Soviet Union, Argentina in 2001, Zimbabwe in 2008, Venezuela from 2010 to today. And I'm going to put them side by side with what's being said right now by governments currently sitting on debt loads, inflation trajectories, and currency problems that rhyme uncomfortably with all of them. Central bank press releases, emergency broadcast archives from 4 countries that no longer function the way they did when those broadcasts aired. What I found is not that governments are uniquely evil or uniquely stupid. What I found is that they follow a script, an invisible playbook that kicks in automatically when the math stops working. And if you know the 3 lines on that script, you'll have roughly a 90-day lead time before things get very bad, very fast. 3 lies. Let's go. Before the countdown, I need to explain how I filtered the noise. Because a government says 100 things on any given day. Most of it is spin. Some of it is incompetence. I'm not interested in any of that. I'm looking for a specific type of statement that meets 3 criteria. First, it has to be measurably false at the time it was delivered. Not retrospectively wrong. We can all be wrong about the future. I'm talking about statements where internal data, classified reports, private briefings contradicted the public statement at the moment it was made. It has to appear with statistical regularity across collapse events in different countries, different economic systems, different political ideologies. If right-wing governments and left-wing governments and authoritarian regimes and democracies all say the same thing right before the lights go out, that's a pattern embedded in the structure of how power responds to its own failure. Third, it has to be actionable in reverse, meaning, if you know the lie, you can do something physically different this week that improves your position. I don't care about abstract historical trivia. I care about the Monday morning question. What do you do with this? 3 criteria. Let's stack them. Lie number 3, the fundamentals are strong. Here's a sentence that will ruin your relationship with every financial headline you read for the rest of your life. The phrase, the fundamentals of our economy are strong, has been uttered by a head of state or central bank official, in those exact words, or a close variant, within 18 months of a major currency devaluation, banking crisis, or sovereign default in every single case I could find in the last century. Every single one. Let me give you the timestamps. Herbert Hoover, October 25, 1929. One day after Black Thursday. Quote, the fundamental business of the country, that is production and distribution of commodities, is on a sound and prosperous basis. The Dow would lose 89% of its value over the next 3 years. Alan Greenspan, March 1999. Quote, the American economy has never been in better shape. 18 months later, the dot-com bubble lost $5 trillion. Henry Paulson, August 2007. Quote, I see the underlying economy as being very healthy. The subprime crisis was already burning. He had access to the data. He said it anyway. Here's the mechanism, the why, because knowing the phrase isn't enough. Governments don't say the fundamentals are strong to inform you. They say it to buy time. When a Treasury Minister uses that phrase, the translation is not, everything is fine. The translation is, we have 6 to 24 months before this becomes impossible to hide. And we need that window to transfer assets, implement capital controls, draft emergency legislation. And they need you to remain calm, not moving your money, not buying hard assets, not stocking your pantry, not questioning the narrative while they do it. That phrase is a sedative, and they keep using it because it works. Now open your phone. Right now, search any central bank press release from the last 6 months. Count how many times you see resilient, solid fundamentals, well-positioned, soft landing, or orderly adjustment. You're going to lose count around 12. Those aren't confidence signals. Those are the vocabulary of a system managing its own unwinding. Here's the thing about that sedative quality. It doesn't just prevent panic, it prevents preparation. The phrase creates a specific cognitive frame. This situation is being managed by competent people who have access to information I don't. And that frame is deliberately cultivated, Because a prepared population is a population that is already partially decoupled from the system. People with 3 months of food and cash outside the banking system and skills that don't require Amazon are people who won't cause a bank run. They're also people who are much harder to manage during an emergency transition. Prepared people have options. That makes them inconvenient. The catch: lie number 3 is the easiest one to dismiss. Because sometimes the fundamentals are actually okay, and a politician is just doing what politicians do. The phrase alone isn't the alarm. The alarm is the phrase combined with 3 simultaneous conditions. Inflation that's been officially redefined, so it measures smaller than it is, government debt service costs exceeding roughly 15% of tax revenue, and a pattern of emergency central bank interventions on no-notice weekends. When those 3 conditions are running and you hear the fundamentals are strong, that's not spin. That's the script activating. And right now, in at least 4 major economies, all 3 conditions are live. The good news, there is real good news here. Lie number 3 is the warning shot. It gives you the most lead time, months, maybe a year or more. So you don't panic buy, you don't liquidate everything. You do one thing: look at every financial asset you hold and ask a single question: if the currency it's denominated in loses 30% of its purchasing power in 18 months. That's the Venezuela number, the Argentina number, the early stage Weimar number. If your answer is not much, you start a slow, boring, methodical rotation toward things that aren't that. Hard assets, land, skills, stored goods, not overnight, methodically. Because you still have time. Lie number 3 is the long warning. Use it. We're stepping up now. The next lie means you're running out of runway. Lie number 2, don't panic buy. There's plenty for everyone. This one is operationally evil in a way the first one isn't. Lie number 3 is passive. The government isn't actively trying to harm you, it's protecting itself. Lie number 2 is the moment the government actively deploys the media apparatus to discourage you from taking actions that would protect your family, because those actions would accelerate a timeline they're trying to control. Here's the mechanics. When a collapse is in its middle phase, not beginning, not terminal, but mid-sequence, the single biggest threat to state stability is visible panic. Runs on banks, empty shelves captured on phones, long lines at gas stations looping on the news, convincing people who weren't worried to get worried. Collapse has a contagion problem. The fear of scarcity creates the scarcity. And governments know this. It's documented in emergency management literature going back decades. So they solve the contagion problem by criminalizing the rational response to scarcity. They call it hoarding. They make it a social crime. They run media campaigns showing images of greedy individuals with carts overflowing with toilet paper, framing the person trying to feed their family as the problem. They introduce purchase limits. They threaten price gouger prosecutions. And in the same press release, they tell you, there is no shortage. Both things cannot simultaneously be true. If there's no shortage, there's nothing to hoard. If hoarding is dangerous, there's a shortage. The contradiction doesn't matter because you're not the audience. The media cycle is the audience. Look at the historical record. Soviet Union, 1989 to 1991. As the USSR was collapsing, state media was running near daily segments about the dangers of deficit psychology, propaganda arguing the belief in shortages was causing the shortages, not actual supply problems. By 1991, there were genuine food lines in Moscow. They were still running the segments. Venezuela, 2012 onward, the Chavez and then Maduro government spent 3 years publicly shaming economic saboteurs, their term for anyone buying extra food or converting bolivars to dollars. State television ran segments showing warehouses that were allegedly full to prove abundance. Some were real. Some were rented and stocked for the camera. By 2016, Venezuelans were losing an average of 24 pounds per year due to food scarcity. They called it the Maduro diet. That wasn't dark humor at that point. There were no jokes, Leafeat. Here's the part that connects this to right now. And you don't have to go to Venezuela to find it, but rhymed with one at the edges. Multiple governments publicly discouraged mask buying. Masks don't work, save them for healthcare workers, while privately coordinating emergency federal mask procurement. That wasn't confusion. That was lie number 2, operating in real time, in a non-collapse context, by governments that consider themselves among the most transparent in the world. The behavior is baked in. It's not ideology, not malice, mostly. It's institutional self-preservation mechanics. When the system is stressed, the system produces this lie automatically. Now I want you to do something physical. Go to your pantry, literally right now. Go look and count how many weeks of food you actually have in there. Most American households run around 7 to 10 days of real food if the grocery store stops being replenished. 7 to 10 days. FEMA's recommendation, and FEMA is not a doomsday prepper organization, they're a federal bureaucracy, is 72 hours. 3 days. They lowered their own standard to something that almost no scenario actually buys you. Here's the sentence that changes how you think about that pantry. Every government in history that has deployed lie number 2 has been telling its citizens that preparation is the problem at the exact moment preparation was the only remaining solution. That's not hyperbole, that's the documented sequence. The window where private preparation works closes approximately 60 days after lie number 2 enters the official messaging cycle at scale. After 60 days, the shelves start showing gaps. Prices on available goods spike. Lines start. The distribution system, which was always just in time, always running on a 72-hour inventory cycle, always one supply chain disruption from hollow, begins to show its true skeleton. And the people who listened to the government, who didn't stockpile because the government told them not to, are now competing with everyone else who also listened. The Monday test here is simple, not bunker building. Not anything that makes your neighbors look at you sideways. Add one extra item to every grocery trip for the next 90 days. One extra bag of rice. One extra can. One extra can. One extra bottle. After 90 days, you'll have built 3 to 4 weeks of food buffer. Quietly, affordably, without a single emergency purchase, while every official is still on television saying there's nothing to worry about. That's not hoarding. That's arithmetic applied to history. Let's pause here because I know the objection. You're thinking, this is America. We're not Venezuela. We have rule of law, deep capital markets, a reserve currency, checks and balances. Comparing us to a petrostate that was already fragile is a false equivalency. And you know what? That argument isn't entirely wrong. The institutional depth is real. I'm not telling you we're 6 months from empty shelves. But Argentina had the 8th largest economy in the world in 1999. It had IMF support. It had the US dollar peg everyone praised as a stabilizing masterstroke. It had rule of law and a democratic tradition and sophisticated financial markets. And on December 3rd, 2001, the government froze every bank account in the country. Everyone. For 12 months, middle-class families who had done everything right, saved diligently, trusted the institutions, went from comfortable to food insecure in roughly 90 days. The institutional depth doesn't protect you. It delays you, and the delay makes the lie more effective. Because the longer the system has run smoothly, the more thoroughly it has trained you to trust the institutions that are now lying to you. That's the real trap, not the collapse. The trust. We've covered the warning shot and the active deception. Now we get to the one that actually kills people. And I mean that literally. Lie number 1. Help is on the way, not close. Not even in the same category. The first 2 lies make you complacent. This one makes you stay put and wait while the window to act is closing behind you. And unlike the first 2, which are delivered before a crisis is visible, this one gets delivered during the crisis, when people are scared, when they're physiologically primed to believe someone with authority who tells them the cavalry is coming. Let me build the architecture before I give you the examples, because the mechanism is everything. 2 things happen simultaneously. First, the official response apparatus activates emergency declarations, resource allocations, media briefings. Second, the actual capacity of that apparatus immediately starts degrading, because the crisis that overwhelmed the infrastructure is also overwhelming the infrastructure the government uses to respond. Roads are blocked, communications are jammed, the supply chain's responders depend on the same ones that just broke. The people organizing relief are also dealing with their own disrupted homes and families. This is not a failure of individual officials. It's a structural problem. It's physics applied to mass disruption. The larger and faster the crisis, the less functional the response, exactly at the moment you need it most. Every emergency management researcher knows this. It's in the literature, not controversial. What is controversial is the gap between what the government promises and what it can actually deliver. And that gap is what this lie exploits. The lie doesn't say help will arrive in 3 hours. Never that specific. That would be falsifiable. The lie says, help is on the way. We are surging resources. The federal response is unprecedented in scope. We will not abandon you. These are unfalsifiable commitments that create the impression of imminent assistance without a specific timeline, quantity, or mechanism that could be checked. And people believe them. Because they want to believe them. Because the alternative that you are on your own, right now, with whatever you have, is genuinely terrifying. Walk through the case files with me. New Orleans 2005. Katrina hits August 29th. By August 31st, the Superdome, the official shelter of last resort, had 30,000 people inside with inadequate food, water, and sanitation. President Bush, from Air Force One on August 31st, I'm not going to abandon the people of the Gulf Coast. September 1st, 4 days after landfall. I don't think anyone anticipated the breach of the levees. The people who had sheltered in place, who stayed because they believed help was coming, waited in that stadium for 5 days. In the heat, without adequate water. With bodies. While helicopters flew overhead and official briefings remained optimistic. 1,836 people died. Many of them died during the waiting period. The ones who left before the storm, or who evacuated immediately after without waiting for official clearance, had a dramatically higher survival rate. The ones who trusted help is on the way faced conditions the response apparatus genuinely could not manage fast enough. Puerto Rico, 2017. Hurricane Maria, Category 4, took out the entire power grid of a U.S. territory. Official death toll initially reported at 64. Independent academic estimates later put it between 2,975 and 8,000 excess deaths. The number I want you to hold: it took 11 months to fully restore power. 11 months, during which official messaging consistently described the response as historic, robust, and accelerating. FEMA was posting supply updates on Twitter. The president threw paper towels at people. The gap between what was promised and what was delivered wasn't a rounding error. It was a year of darkness for 3.3 million American citizens who had every reason to believe the government would actually show up. Now let me give you the physics of why this keeps happening. Because it's not about corruption or incompetence. It's structural. FEMA's own planning documents, declassified, publicly available, 4 minutes of searching, acknowledge a concept called surge capacity degradation. What this means in plain language: emergency response capacity decreases as event scale increases. For localized disasters, the response apparatus works reasonably well. The system was built for those. Scale up to regional disasters, capacity starts dropping. At national or multi-regional scale, FEMA's own modeling shows response capability falls below 40% of what's needed to meet the stated commitment of leaving no one behind. Below 40%. Their number, in their documents, not read at press conferences. What this means is that for any scenario that rises above a localized disaster, and several currently probable scenarios do, the official promise of response is a structural impossibility, not bad intentions. Physics. You cannot deploy 50,000 emergency responders to a region where the roads don't work, the fuel depots are compromised, the communications infrastructure is damaged, and the responders themselves are dealing with the same crisis that you are. Now let me take you somewhere further back and further away, because I want to show you this isn't an American failure or a democratic failure, it's a structural one. Ukraine, 1932. Stalin's agricultural collectivization program has created a famine. The Soviets are exporting grain from Ukraine, while Ukrainians are starving. And the official Soviet position throughout the entire period is that there is no famine. That help is embedded in the collective, that the system will provide. Any suggestion otherwise is Western propaganda designed to destabilize the revolution. The people who waited for official assistance, who believed the system, died. The ones who fled to cities, hid grain, or crossed borders illegally had a statistically higher survival rate. Estimates of deaths range from 3.5 to 7 million Ukrainians. The waiting itself was the sentence. I know that's an extreme case and an extreme regime. Help is on the way is not always help from a rescue team. Sometimes it's the system will provide. Your pension is safe. Your deposits are guaranteed. The supply chain disruption is being resolved. These are all the same lie. They all create the same behavioral output, inaction during the window when action is still possible. Let me put you in the scenario so you can feel the timeline. Imagine a cascading grid failure in a mid-sized metro area, not a war. A sustained grid failure, the kind NERC, the North American Electricity Reliability Corporation, rates as a high probability scenario in their annual risk assessments. In January, it's 14 degrees outside. Grid goes down Friday evening. Saturday morning, official statements are positive. Crews are working. Restoration expected within 48 to 72 hours. Call 911 for emergencies. Day 2. It's 40 degrees inside your house. The 72-hour estimate is revised to several days. Warming centers are announced, some running on backup generators that weren't designed for 4-day operation. Official messaging still calm, still reassuring. Day 4. Pipes in older homes start freezing. Restoration estimates now at least a week. Emergency teams are triaging hypothermia cases and carbon monoxide poisonings first. The people who stayed because they believed the 48-hour estimate are now day 4 into a situation that is measurably dangerous. The people who left on day 1, who didn't wait for official clearance, who had a plan and executed it, are warm. That is not a hypothetical. It is the documented pattern from every extended grid failure in modern American history. The 2021 Texas freeze, the 2003 Northeast blackout, the 2012 Sandy outage in New Jersey, where some residents were without power for 3 weeks, with official assurances running the entire time. Here's what you do this week. Physically, before another video. Step 1. Go to your contacts and count the people within 10 minutes of you who actually know your name. Not followers, not digital contacts. People who have physically been in your space, who have a skill or resource you don't. Write that number down. For most urban Americans, it's 3 to 5. For most suburban Americans, 1 to 3. For most people who've been consuming preparedness content for years while optimizing gear, it's often 0 to 2. That number is your actual survival network on a grid down Wednesday in January. Not FEMA, not 9/11, not the Red Cross. That number. Step 2. Identify one skill, one supply category, and one infrastructure dependency, where you currently have zero fallback. If the system providing it stopped for 2 weeks, just one of each. Write them down. Step 3. Fix the weakest one first. Not the sexiest one, the weakest one. And this is important. I'm not talking about a bunker. I'm not talking about $50,000 of gear. I'm talking about the 3-week window. If you can operate independently for 3 weeks, meaning food, water, heat, basic medical, and a communication plan with people you know, you will outlast the acute phase of almost every non-nuclear disaster scenario that emergency management agencies currently plan for. 3 weeks is the number where official response systems usually stabilize enough to begin functioning at a scale that actually reaches people. Not fixed, not restored, just functional enough to reach people. Most households are 7 to 10 days from nothing. Close that gap first. Everything else is optimization, because the lie says someone else is responsible for your survival. The history says they're not in the timeline that actually matters when things move fast. Every person in every collapse who survived on their own terms did so because they stopped waiting for a cavalry that was always, structurally, going to arrive too late. 3 lies, 1 script, deployed by every government in every ideological flavor, on every continent, for 100 years. The fundamentals are strong, means we need you calm while we manage the timeline. Don't panic buy, means your preparation threatens our narrative. Help is on the way, means please don't act until it's harder to act. They're all being said right now, in slightly different words, with different accents. You've heard the lies. The question is what you do before the next press conference.